as disclosure goes forward, there's a risk of a reaction from that group, the reactionaries, that could be very dangerous. You have people who are very much involved in some of the congressional and even people close to the president who have been gaslit and confused about what part of this is ours and what part of this is extraterrestrial. This is what typically happens. You can go on 60 Minutes if you tell half-truths and lies, because the major media corporations are vertically and horizontally integrated into this covert system. The question is, what's your price? What is your price? For Joe Rogan, it was $100 million. For Spotify, for Greer, it was whatever. The head of Army Intelligence, General Stubblebine III, offered me $2 billion in 1992 to shut up and not do what I'm doing. I said, no thanks. The chain of command got severed, and there was a decapitation, if you will, or a little bit of a coup d'etat that happened in the late 1950s when Eisenhower inadvertently lost control of these covert operations dealing with the retrieval and reverse engineering of extraterrestrial vehicles. The CIA is using advanced tech to stage false alien abductions in Brazil and Argentina, targeting their word, peasants, for its psychological warfare value. It's in black and white. This is a very dangerous game being played. And I think this is why General Stubblebine offered me the $2 billion. He knew that I had figured out how contact is made, and he knew I was a medical doctor, and that I would be able to connect these dots and help them develop their Hitlerian, nasty little program. And so what I've found is that the technologies are in the hands of an unsupervised and rogue element that have abused them and are an existential threat, not only to our national security, but also to world peace and security. But what people don't realize is that there's a concomitant increase in the biological as well as electromagnetic weapon technologies from studying extraterrestrial materials that have now been turned against not only humans in some cases, but are being turned against the extraterrestrial vehicles and their people. And it is something that is coming to a head only because as disclosure goes forward, there's a risk of a reaction from that group, the reactionaries, that could be very dangerous. When I first started working with all these guys here, they have a type of, I call it disclosure PTSD. It's a traumatic. And people laugh. I said, no, this is for me, in the 1990s, it was very traumatic to find out about this was absolutely real, that it was being kept secret, that it was out of control, and that there was a compartmented part of it that were already committing atrocities such as staged fake alien abductions and mutilations. Everybody's heard of these. Everybody assumes they're alien. They are not. We have a testimony from Air Force intelligence officer as well as documents that prove that those were being done by humans for their, quote, psychological warfare value. So the sort of manipulation that some people observed with COVID, put that on steroids. And that's what you're dealing with here. To what end? So I think there are two things. One is that they want to keep the energy technologies away. And this is why we did the Lost Century and how to reclaim it, with an expose of what the world has lost through this illegal secrecy and how we need to regain it and what the world looks like after that, which is gorgeous, beautiful. A totally transformed planet. If we no longer had to have any polluting sources of energy, the energy itself was free once you had the device, the 0-point generator system, and poverty around the world would vanish in a generation, about 20 years. But there's some big stakeholders, right? Hundreds of trillions of dollars at stake. So this is where you get into a real power struggle, which is what this issue is. The other part of it is that if you look at sort of the lockdowns and global control that happened, that was, can I be blunt? I know for a fact that was a beta test for what they're wanting to do on this issue. And that is to disclose it in such a way that it manipulates the public into fear so that they can then, through sort of a totalitarian militarism and central state authority, control the whole world, not just one country, As Reagan said, he got brainwashed. I know who did it, where he said, wouldn't our job of creating world unity be easier if we had a common alien threat to fight? So this is why they've spent so much time making, bad Hollywood movies and UFO conferences and staging these ridiculous abductions, which are gruesome, and there are terrible victims of those. But they're not being done by extraterrestrial beings. They're being done by what's called stagecraft, using advanced man-made ET-looking craft, but they're not ET, and other technologies, electromagnetic warfare systems, chemical canisters, and what have you. And I've debriefed a number of people who have been both the operators of those systems and the victims. And so this is something that needs to come out, because part of it is that when you look at what this Marine officer, he was a platoon member in Indonesia, and his name is Michael Herrera, and his testimony we now have, and he was at the National Press Club event. He was in Indonesia in 2009, and there was about a 300 feet in diameter man-made UFO, and it was staffed with some very serious deep black operatives. When they stumbled across it on that humanitarian mission after the tsunami and earthquake in 2009 in Indonesia, these men basically said, we're going to have to kill all of you. And it was a miracle that those 6 guys, those young guys, were not killed. But what he saw was not only the craft hovering, but some crates that he initially thought maybe they were running drugs. They were also running some old arms. They were arms dealing as well, using this technology, because you can move at such speeds that you can't even be seen on radar. And this he learned later, because we have someone currently in the system at a very high level who had seen the same thing, and those crates were carrying people. They were trafficking in children and women and some men to be used in human experimentation in these programs. Now, I'm saying this for an absolute fact. I have multiple witnesses to this. We have a 3rd whistleblower that's come forward who was involved in those sort of atrocities. This is an out-of-control group that has got to get reined in. The risk is that they start pushing buttons and pulling levers before that can happen. So on the one hand, we're making great progress. On the other hand, to be blunt, Brian, the time is not writ large on our side.
Right.
Because I met with a man in the 1990s who had been on an interagency committee dealing with this, that he said in 1974, we could have pushed a button and we would have had all these man-made ATs, advanced technologies, that look like UFOs. And to a jet pilot, they do, like Mr. Fravor. Because they are a UFO. They're unidentified to them, not to us. And so we can launch those all over the world, do a few things, and it'll look like we're under alien attack. That has always been the long-term plan. Interestingly, a man named Wernher von Braun, who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, he and many others were brought into the States under Operation Paperclip, and his spokesperson for the last 5 years of his life, Carol Rosin, is on our team. And on his deathbed, he said, yes, that is the plan. They're going to stage an alien threat. There is no alien threat. We're the problem. There are aliens out there, but they're concerned about our hostility. And he made it very clear that this whole plan was what had already been launched in the 1950s, which is why you began to see, after we mastered gravity control, this is why you began to see all these famous celebrated abduction cases, like Betty and Barney Hill. Mr. Obama's doing a documentary series about that event, but he doesn't know that was us. He actually thinks that it was aliens.